I helped paint that wall.
Are you saying?
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
need to
fine.
learn, babe.
So I can start off a bit. I'm going to ask some questions as we go, and so you're not going to answer them.
No.
All right.
Okay, shall I just introduce you again, just for the camera? We're very pleased to have Helen Brunner, and very grateful that she's happy to have it recorded so other people can hear it. And we're at Suzuki Hub on level 1 and 2 teacher training.
Lovely.
So
Thank
welcome.
you very much, Kate. That's wonderful. I've always loved this book. I've always loved Kate, so there's a double whammy. And I love teacher training more than words can say. And my favourite level for teacher training is level 1. So you can see all the stars are aligned for this hour. So I'm just going to start with a question. And it's a question I know that you know the answer to. That's one of the things we learn as Suzuki teachers. Don't start asking questions when they go, So I know you know the answers, and I just hope you can come up with something. There can be no wrong answer, but this subject of this talk is called philosophy. So in a few words, how would you express Suzuki philosophy, Kit? What do you think, Caroline? Anything?
Every child can learn.
Samantha, Joanna.
Breaking things down into small chunks so we can learn.
Thank you. Mimi? Anything, you can repeat the same ones.
Don't hurry, but don't.
Never hurry, never rest.
Never hurry,
something
never
like
rest.
that.
So learning music like the mother tongue.
Lovely. Ed?
Loving environment for learning and progress.
You have to say it again for me.
Loving environment,
Oh,
caring environment for
Yeah.
progress.
Freya?
There's a Suzuki triangle between the parent
Oh my
and the
goodness.
teacher.
So Kate, you've done your work brilliantly. I'm going to
Don't
take...
forget Kit just done.
Oh, she never answered.
No, you put her on the spot too much.
No, Kit, you get your moments.
That's okay, you can skip
You
me.
don't know me well enough. I'm ruthless with this. Because one of the things about being a musician is ready and go. You just have to find your spot, expect it, and then take it. Anyway, Kit.
Like,
You can repeat anything that they've said because they're all wonderful answers.
you know you're able to do things.
Yeah. Feeling of capacity, absolutely correct. So I'm just going to put all those into orders, and I see them as all incredibly important parts. And I do really seriously mean it when I turn to Kate and say she's done her work, because you've actually heard and understood some things already. Whoa, you have. I've taken many people off the street and they don't give those answers. In a nutshell, every child can, those 3 words, just write them down, capital letters, every child can, is a way of embracing all of the above. And it comes, I believe, prior to breaking it down, to having a good relationship with the parent and the child and so. Because if I have a good relationship with you, say, Joanna, and there's the little Marys beside us, everything's going fine. You're the parent, right? I'm a teacher. But you come from a background, like most of us do, just about all of us do, of thinking that music's inherited. And so you're thinking, you come into the room and you think, I wonder if Mary, I wonder if she'll indicate that she's good at this. I'll be so pleased. I really wanted to play the violin, but I don't want to force her, and I don't want to do something against her nature. So you come in already with a kind of prejudice, do you see? Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, oh, please, could you break this down? Could you do that? And you're thinking, yes, but when you get home, you've got your doubts still in you. I wonder if she's going to be any good. I don't know. I mean, her grandfather was quite good. He used to play the bar piano, and Uncle Rodney played the guitar, so maybe there might be some in it. But most parents I have, and I think they're the same as yours, everywhere in the world, are thinking, I'm no good at this. I'm not really very good. Of course we do occasionally, 1 in 20 might actually be a musician, but basically I'm talking about ordinary people that we meet, that we teach. So the parent has to have that philosophy shared before before he or she even comes into the room. You know, every child can is an incredible statement, and it flies in the face of education. I have various cuttings, don't have time to show you all of them now, but one came out from the music press earlier this year, and he was talking about government's attitude towards music, which you know in this country is pitiful, absolutely pitiful. That's where we should be working next, at government level, Kate, that's your next decade. And it said, we must be, it was a pro, somebody standing up pro music, for music in schools, right? Saying, we must recognise the children that have talents and let their little, you know, talent, their ability develop. That's what we've got to do. Okay, that's not what we've got. Every child, yeah? Every child can. Every child can. You've just written it down, right? If that is not clear to you, you need to do some more observation. You need to do more watching and seeing the miracle happen every single time. Not just for the ones that came in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with everything for them. You know, all the children, every child. And I don't just mean handicapped children, though I do have experience of having a child who's blind, one who's mute. I've had lots of autistic children and so on. I'm not actually talking particularly in that area of children that have got their own handicaps. We know that is absolutely possible for them to learn. But I'm talking about just the majority of kids that come your way and the majority of parents that come your way. And when I say majority of parents, I would say nearly every parent will come into the room with the expectation that the music has been inherited from either them or their wife or their husband or from uncle or grandfather or whatever, right? They so often come in and say, you know, he was banging a drum when he was only 9 months old, or she sings in the bath every time, or they love hearing when we go to church and they sing. They show you that their child is musical. Do you see what I mean? They prove it to you by giving you this information. Oh, he absolutely loves music, you know. Oh, I see. So he's inherited it. No, I don't see. Right? Of course he loves music. Children inherently love music. All human beings are actually made so that they can appreciate music, and you know, you've read enough about it, I'm sure, to know that the pyramids were made with music. Stonehenge was made by music. Those we now know they came from Wales. It's a lot of singing between Wales and Wiltshire, but that's how, because human beings are made to use their bodies and use their breath and sing. And there's now more and more evidence, that'll be in your generation to find out, about the fact that music came before words. Communication between human beings, not even sure if you call them human beings, that's Neanderthal man, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not giving you accurate information, but it's all out there, and it's bursting out there information to show that music is prior to words. So it is, Suzuki, you see, intuited all this. I mean, this is where we could have a slight divergence from the topic on the card, and that is Suzuki, who was my teacher, very much. I feel very much I was his student and graduated from Japan. And I look back at him now, because he's died in 1998, so we've had 20 whatever odd years to consider, and I see he's actually, in my estimation, in my understanding, his status, if you like, has risen, and I see him now, this is quite a colourful thing to say, as almost beyond human He had understandings that were so ludicrously ahead of his time. When I was studying, everybody went, you know what, he's a generation ahead of his time. 2, 3 generations ahead of his time. I mean, things that he said then are only just beginning to come true now. Yeah? English is the international language, he said. That's one of the things that I was around at the time when they said, that's absurd. Why on earth does he say things like that? Everybody knows it's going to be Russian. And then after that, when Kate was around, they said, don't be absurd, everybody knows it's going to be Chinese. And in between somewhere it's going to be Spanish. And the French, of course, said it's going to be French. Well, he was right. English was the international language. How did he know? I don't know. Because he had powers of being that were beyond. That's all I can say. To me, it's saint-like, but that might not be your form. You might not take that as a given because of, cultural differences between us and so on. But he was not a regular man. His understanding of Every Child Can was just so incredibly profound. It was beyond even the level of genius. He knew that every child can at a time when the entire world, that's 6 billion people, said not every child can. And most of the parents you meet will say, I understand every child can, except for my child. You haven't met Jimmy yet. He actually lies on the floor and kicks and throws the violin across the room, so obviously he's not musical. But you, as a Suzuki teacher, have to be beyond that understanding. You have to understand what that means. He's not actually screaming against music, you see. You have to be able to translate. I hate you. Oh, I've been told that. I'm a parent. I'm not only a Suzuki teacher, I'm a parent 4 times. And I absolutely remember my son saying, I hate the violin and I hate you. He was 7. Don't look at me shocked. Has that never happened to you?
Yeah.
Ask the nearest parent you've ever met.
Almost a daily basis.
I hate. So they don't actually mean they're using language. Hate's a powerful word for a child. I tried to get my children not to be able to say it. I used to have sort of rewards and for the days in which we didn't say I hate Jenny because she's mean to me. I hate my teacher and all that kind of thing. It's not good language, so we work quite a lot on that. But Every Child Can is something that Suzuki knew. He proved it over and over again. I do suggest that you find some old tapes and videos of his students performing when they're quite young. It's very motivating for you guys to see some book 1 pieces played by really super kids. That was the first shock I had when I went to Japan before I even met Suzuki and Matsumoto. I had met Suzuki prior to studying with him many times, but I'd never actually gone as a dedicated, devoted student. So I spent 1 night or 2 nights in Tokyo, and the first student I saw was about that size, 5 years old, and played Allegretto, and I'll never forget it. Why will I never forget it? Just because I learned something just like that by watching her that was a life changer. She played it like this, with a smile on her face and a smile on the mother's face, and the teacher was very pleased. I couldn't speak Japanese, I don't know what the teacher said, and then the teacher said, okay, now let's discuss the pieces for the teaching points for Andantino. Now that was amazing to me, because I heard that little girl playing Allegretto, and I thought, she must be in book 2, she must maybe in book 3 actually. And she wasn't so young, 5, not amazing. But she performed it. That piece just jumped off the page, and I was so sure, I was wrong, I was so sure it was because I was a visitor from England and that they put forward this little girl, who was obviously a really good player, to play absolutely something stunning for me, just so that I could see the highest possible level. That is the level at which they teach. So that means the parent has absolutely understood every single thing about how to work with a child, what the expectations. So the parent's expectations of that child must have been that high, and the child accommodated it. Do you see? I was blown away by that. And you might say that's, why wasn't I blown away by the Tchaikovsky played by the 12-year-old next week, Well, I obviously was impressed by that too, but something about the fact that Suzuki had told me to go to this teacher, Hirose. I just know Suzuki had these powers. I kept thinking he had these powers over me. It took me a couple of years to realize he has powers over everybody. And I thought he just, sorted out my life by, I don't know, intuition or whatever. But I'm sure he sent me there so that I could hear this, so that I could see what it meant to teach music wholeheartedly, so that the person in front of you is playing music that is absolutely 100% the piece that is intended by the composer. In this case, the composer happened to be Suzuki, but it doesn't matter. There was no gap between the intention of the composer and the listener. Okay, write that down. No gap between the intention of the listener, of the composer, and the listener. You can write this down as well if you like, but it's a well-known quote from Beethoven, no less. He wrote this at the end of his 131, the string quartet. He wrote, "From the heart of the composer to the heart of the listener." That's what Beethoven wrote in, give me a help here, 1810 or something. He died 1820. No, 27. He died in 1827, I think. Anyway.
From the heart of the composer to the heart of the listener.
Yeah. And how often do we see that? How often do you really see the intention of the composer in Minuet 2 or Gosset Gavotte or Chorus from Judas Maccabeus, Handel Boring? How often do you see it without any gap at all? Just, there's the piece for you. Boom! Gotcha! Do you see what I mean? It has an incredible effect because it's not what I'd had. And I was in my 30s at the time, and I'd had a lifetime in music, and there'd always been a gap. Until I went to, the Albert Hall and last night the prom from, big concert. And that's when I cried, because there was no gap. Because I heard a singer, a player, Isaac Stern played, I heard the Oistrakh playing Bach double. There was no gap between what Bach required, what his intention was, and what I was feeling. Sometimes there's a gap because of practicalities, because you can't really hear them, can't really see them. You're in the gallery. You don't like being with your person you're with. It's late at night. I'm hungry. I mean, lots of reasons for gaps.
You've got a mask on.
You've got a mask on. All that. All these. But can you understand what it means? Every child can do that. And it depends on the parents' understanding of this. So what's the biggest tool? Somebody mentioned it already. For the parent.
The Suzuki triangle and working with their child because they're with the child most of the week.
Exactly. So the tool, our tool, we're talking as teachers, is the parent. That's how the parent is going to, how the child is going to be able to play, through the parent. Yeah? Doesn't mean that a lot of people misunderstood this in the old days, that the parents got to be able to play the violin brilliantly. And I have to say, at one point in his teaching, Suzuki advocated that, and that was the time when William Starr was there. I'm going to say this very quickly because it's not interesting for the video. There was a time in the, I'm going to just guess, the early 80s or something like that, when Suzuki really believed, I think I'm going to have all the parents learn. And he had all the parents learn with a little violin and then learn with a big violin, and they all learned like book one, and they'd have parents' classes. He dropped it. So many things like that. He gave it a good shot. Everybody's got to do this. When Suzuki took some idea, by the way, everybody had to do it. He got all his teachers were devoted to him, and he would say, this is what you've got to do. There's no way they could go, oh, I don't think so, Sensei.
That's exactly
no
what we're talking
way. You just did it. Mm? So one of the things I have to work at with teachers, trainees, such as yourself, and also with parents, so at this point, for a moment, you can imagine your parents, and that is, how do you receive the wisdom that I'm passing on from Suzuki? I'm not going to call it my wisdom, I'm going to call it his wisdom. How do you perceive that? I sense that Kate's already been there. I'll tell you why, because I can feel already, and I'm not a magician, I can feel already in the room, there's a kind of buzz. It's a little sort of buzz, just something, you know, like a smile or a nod or a pencil or a hand or something. You're just, with your body language, you're okay with it, you're hearing me. You're saying, at least, bottom line, okay, we'll give you a chance. Kid, I have to work with you. Give me a chance, please. Okay? One of the things you can do that's going to help me is to use your eyes more. Okay? I know if I go like this, you feel very threatened, and I appreciate that, and I'm not going to go there. So I'm going to try not to, I might just flick past you, but not to try and stare you out. But I'd like you to use your eyes. You're sitting very near me, right? And I've got phenomenal energy. And you can actually take that energy through your eyes, okay? So it's just a way of imbibing the information. Now, I can't talk to parents like that, perhaps quite so directly, but I might say it like this. I'll do it with Kate because she's neutral in this thing. I might say, Kate, could you just, I might even say, could you just open up a little bit, and help me in the lesson a little by giving me your attention. Do you know what that means? And a focus, and you'll sort of, yeah, I think I do, right? Because that will help me. If you actually give me some of your energy, Kate, I'd really love it, because that's going to help me teach Joseph. Yeah? I feel that's going to help in your understanding when I talk, right? So now I did that, absolutely focused like that, and then she'll go back. She'll probably giggle a little and think, ooh, I wonder what Helen meant. But the thing is, I put the finger here, it'll help me. It would help me very much. And I said it to Kit, did you notice? First thing I said to her, it will help me. It's not, Kate, you're holding out on me. That's never going to help. Why would you? I mean, as soon as I say that, you are going to pull away from me. You're going to pull away from me because, you know, like, what are you saying? I'm here, I paid my money, I've given my time, and now you're saying I'm not doing enough. That doesn't work. But it would help me if, right? And I feel it already very much in this room. So that's excellent that you've started moving in this direction. So this is what you have to do on a daily basis in your teaching with the parents. And you have to be very clever with words. You, by the way, Caroline, are very clever with words. I've noticed how you speak. It's very interesting. So you might even ask Caroline for some tips on that, yeah? Because we all need to know how to use words. I'm not actually talking about your diversity word, you know, I'm not talking about problematic words or words we shouldn't use. You know all that already. I'm just talking about how you would do it. But the biggest tip I could possibly give you is take the finger away from the parent and put it on you. Yeah, and absolutely the finger will never be on the child. The child in this whole triangle is blameless. The child is neutral. Child was born absolutely perfect, unless unfortunately you're a Catholic and then you have baptised him and he will be filled with original sin.
Oh my God.
I know. Well, there's a lot to get through, Johanna, in that case. You've got to work through that, honey bun. You know better now. You know, that was then. Because, seriously, I teach in Poland and it's a Catholic country, and I know how strong that is, because with the original sin that little Joseph and Maria were born with, goes with original non-musicality or non-ability. You see, that's the trouble about any kind of religion that says, there you are, that's how you're born, because we want to open up from all that. You are an open book, you are a perfect specimen, yeah? You are, you know, my beloved, created through love, created through energy, whatever, and I believe very highly of you. I often say to my parents, in a jokey way, but actually it's very serious, I go like this, I hate to pick one guy, I'm going to try Ed, right? See, just be cool about it, okay? Ed, do you know what? I often have the feeling that I have higher expectations of Joseph than you do. Now that's a bit of a shock for parents to hear that. And they think, what's she talking about? You know, Joseph's my child, I give him everything he has, you know, my love, my attention, you know, birthdays, Christmas, I mean, you know, what's she talking about? So you have to kind of understand. So I might just open up a bit and say, do you know, even though I see, you know, awkward behaviour, or I might say resistant behaviour, another good word for you, Caroline, you can get lists of these things. Rather than say bad behaviour, resistant is a good word. I see resistant behaviour, but you know, when I look at, was it Joseph, whatever, Thomas, when I look at Joseph, I think, boy, you are going to be able to play Fioc or whatever. By the way, that's in book 6, you don't know it yet, but you know, I might even say it goes like this. I might even grab his violin and go, and you're going like, blimey. And I can say, I can see that in him. Here you are, here's the violin back. Yeah? Because it's true. Because it's true. Again and again. I used to think it was very unusual. It's not unusual at all. So your job, you see, my dears, is really big. I mean, it's profound. It is profound. How are you going to look at that child and see the Mendelssohn Final Concerto and actually mean it? Or let's just be a little bit more modest at this point and say, how am I going to see Gosset Gavotte? Or even more modest, how am I ever going to see Lightly Row? Yeah? You've got to actually have it in you. You've got to know. My lovely friend, who's quite recently passed away earlier this year, William Starr, an American teacher, really fantastic teacher. And somebody asked him on an airplane, what's the difference between a Suzuki teacher and a traditional teacher? And he thought for a minute, and he came out with this. This is not Suzuki, this is William Starr, who was one of his students, of course. He said, well, a traditional teacher might say, I believe that every child can be educated. But a Suzuki teacher knows that every child can be educated. And you think, well, isn't that nearly the same? But if you go to Royal, let's say Guildhall, because that's the nearest one, go to Guildhall tomorrow, right, and ask the string faculty, Do you believe that every child can be educated? Do you believe every child can be a musician? They'll probably say, yes, on the whole, I believe it. Yeah, I do believe it, actually. And you think, oh, right, we're halfway there. And then you say, but do you know it? Do you know, absolutely know, they're going to wobble. There's going to be a wobble there. Because they're going to say, well, I believe it for him, her. Oh, not for Jeffrey. Do you see? Because that teacher will say to herself or himself, but that little boy has proved that he's unmusical. You see? So there's a difference between believing everybody's going to be musical and knowing it. If you believe it, you've got your fingers crossed. It comes under that kind of religious background, belief. So you put your fingers behind, I believe it, until something happens. Boom! Then I don't believe it anymore. Now this is one of those things that I've never seen go the other way. I know countless, hundreds, I would say thousands of teachers who've been traditionally brought up, traditionally teaching, who've changed to become Suzuki teachers. Countless. I mean, it's my life's work. How many times have I been in a room like this where there's a group of traditional teachers who say, I used to be a Suzuki teacher, but, thought about it, given it up. I'm going to go back and I'm going to learn how to teach traditionally with the music stand, with the music there, no parents, can't listen to anything, no listening, no group lesson. I think that's what I'm going to go back to. I mean, maybe there is one. I haven't met them yet. And that, I think, is something for you to think about, because why would that be? I mean, lots of people quit smoking and then they go back to smoking. I know that because last time I was here, I had that amazing conversation with your friend who took me home, by the way. Very sweet. Lots of people, Catholic, leave the Catholic Church, go back to the Catholic Church. Nice example. Alcoholics, stop being alcoholics, going back to alcoholics. So that in every case, it's a belief system that's got their change of action. It's not knowing. Do you understand the difference? And that is a big ask for you. Wait a minute, how can you suddenly walk into the hub and within 20 minutes know? I mean, how can you? It's a huge subject. And some of you, Kate's probably one of them, I'm definitely one of them, and I think there's a couple in this room already. Luckily for us, just like that, people often say to me, so how did Suzuki change your life? And I went, he didn't change my life. That's what my life was already. It was already like that. And all that bullshit with grades 1 to 8, and that bullshit at Royal College of Music all those years, and a year at Guild at Juilliard, absolute bullshit. I mean, all of it rubbish until I met Suzuki. So for me, it wasn't he changed my life. They tried to change my life, and then he brought me back to what I knew. I knew it already, and I did know it when I was that size, because I'm lucky, incredibly lucky, brought up in a musical family, and just joy. Music was just a joy. I mean, there's a letter that my mother had. I was born during the war. I hope your children were right. I suppose Helen, as usual, is singing and dancing all through the war. So that was my background, singing and dancing all through the war. So then I learned the awful things of, the theory and the beating times and...
I thought you were going to talk about the awful things of the war.
No,
theory and beating time.
I can't go into rooms with people that sufferers or... because I had such a happy time. Sorry. But seriously, how do you know? So if it comes that way, but you know, there's nothing to knock the slow, steady drip, drip, drip. Nothing to knock that at all. I've seen it countless times. You know, you get an idea, you walk it through, you talk to Kate, you come here every week, you look at a video, you read another book, you read another book, you read another book, you go on YouTube, and you gradually start finding yourself being hungry for it. Not hungry for the other side. You're not any longer in a debate after a few months, you know. The debates, certainly, you know which side you're on, pros and cons. So then you start feeding more into that and watching miracles happen. You know, if you've been around as long as me, one of the miracles that happens in my life, I've got 2 minutes or something.
No, you've got 20 minutes.
Oh, good. Oh, thank God.
If you want them.
Well, yeah, of course I do. One of the miracles was learning that though my children literally lay on the floor sometimes saying, I don't want to play the cello, literally said to me, I hate you, literally said, I hate the violin, and I'm not joking, it always made me cry, and oh, please, you know, please, hang on. When they grew up, and by the way, they all played up to sort of Mozart violin concerto. The 2 girls did Mozart violin concerto, and the 2 boys went up to sort of, not quite the Haydn, but more or less in those days finished the Suzuki method in cello. My other daughter did piano as well. So I did force them, by the way, that's why they hated me, because I forced them to practice, and none of their friends had parents who forced them to practice. Actually, I didn't force them to practice. I don't remember in all my life I ever punished a child for not practicing, nor did I hold them, nor did I push them, nor did I, maybe did I shout at them, Kate?
Probably.
Yeah,
I've
probably.
seen it.
Okay, let's not worry
that's
about
par for the course.
verbal abuse. Okay, not perfect. When they grew up, they all had children rather late in the day. I don't quite know why. They all did lots and lots of different things in their 20s. And in their 30s, we were on a holiday, and my children took me up the mountain, said, we'll meet you at lunch at the top in a ski holiday. And I absolutely love ski holidays. And so, but they were sort of really strange about it. We'll save place. Mum, you're definitely coming, aren't you? Yeah. And we're going to make it 12:30 or whatever. Yeah. I thought, what's going on? They're going to ask me something. And they were all there, and 2 of them, the eldest who had got kids, said, Mum, we want you to teach, one was Madeline and one was Marnie, we want you to teach Madeline and Marnie the violin. And that was, to me, that was like a miracle. And I just said to them, blurted out to them, you can't mean it. Those were the first words I said. Isn't it awful? What a lovely grandma. You can't mean it. You can't mean it. And they went, I said, but it was so awful, you know, he was so awful to me, you know, forcing you to practice and everything. And I went, what? What do you mean? Well, you know, you made such a fuss. Oh, Mum, you're such a dramatist. What sort of fuss did I make? I didn't make a fuss. Excuse me. All they remembered was Suzuki visiting, going on summer camps, going to Wernos, loved it. Going to Bryanston, in the old days it was called Dartington, loved it. Going off to America, Ithaca, all the camps, loved it. Group lessons, loved it. Big concerts, loved it. But they never told me they loved it, you see. They just told me the bits about the practice. So I learned then that when your children say all this sort of thing, you don't have to take it seriously. That is quite an eye-opener for parents that are anxious and, you know, they take it terribly literally. So this is where you've got to sort out your words. I did actually write out once an interpretation of what does it mean when it says, I hate practice. You know, what does it actually mean? And it means that you're uncomfortable practicing, you're suddenly aware at the age of 7, 8, 9 that you're in school and nobody else has to, do you do divine? No, what? Doesn't your mother force you to do violin practice? Do you have to do it? No, I can't believe it. Freya doesn't either. So what's wrong with my mum? What's wrong with my mum? She's forcing me to practice. And all my children individually did that. And now those children, I've now taught 9 of my grandchildren. They all my 4 children went into the Suzuki world. And they're now split, one's in California and one's in Vietnam, and one's in Brighton and one's in London. And I'm still teaching 2 of them. And actually, it's just been completely extraordinary speaking to my own children. They just can't get enough of it. They want to find out now, in retrospect, what happened, because they didn't even realise what wonderful things were happening to them. And I think I'm right in saying, to a man, they all say that was probably the most important influence of their life. It was the Suzuki lessons. Amazing, isn't it? I mean, when you thought you were being a problematic parent, and I kept saying, you can't stop playing the violin because I'm the director of London Suzuki Group and nobody will speak to me again.
I've said that to Tilly, sorry, you can't stop because I run Suzuki Hub.
I mean, that's it.
You quit.
Do you know, one day she's going to be grateful. One day, Tilly's going to turn around to you and she's going to say, thanks, Mum, I can't tell you how grateful.
I mean, it was a
When
very
she's
short-lived
got words.
request, I have to say. She's very only that one time ever asked to stop.
Yeah, but it's a big statement when you say I want to stop, and it's a big statement when you say, darling, you can't. And very, very lucky, I have to say though, there's, how long is a piece of string and what are the parameters? I had 4 children and I was teaching and happened to have 2 houses, so at the weekend we had to pack up and go to the house in the country and come back. I mean, how lucky I was, and that's where we did most of our practice, I might say. I was busy beyond what you could believe. I mean, all the London Suzuki Group stuff was done between the hours of 10 when my children were asleep and 3 in the morning. All my work, all the timetables, all the bills, all the ordering, the fabrics, all the planning, the concerts, all the letters, because we used to write letters in those days, all the letters to people in Liverpool who might have us to play at the cathedral, all the staff of Durham University who might want us to give a demonstration, all the letters I just wrote every day. I mean, in the morning it would be first stop, post box, okay, piles of letters that I wrote during the night, right? Incredibly busy. So, how do you think I managed their violin practice? Well, this is what happened. I gave them each half an hour, but 4 children, you do the maths, 2 hours. Okay, and it was basically from 6 till 8 p.m. So they had supper, they hadn't finished their practice, they hadn't finished their homework and so on. And I did it by the clock, right? This is, don't write anything, because this is not like your profound wisdom coming out. This is just what I did, okay? I did it by the clock. Oh, it's 6 o'clock, it's time. Okay, so Freya, it's 6 o'clock. I'm still, I'll just come in a minute, I haven't quite finished my yogurt. Put it down. But I've got this jigsaw piece in my hand. Put it down. I'm still writing my, put it down. It's 6 o'clock. That's your time. So I would take you, start with you, and then Ed would come, and then whatever. And one of them was me. and so sometimes I used to drop them into each room, different rooms of the house, and then I'd go down in the kitchen and fix myself a gin and tonic and go, oh, please, because it was so stressful.
I was really hoping you would tell this story. I think about that all the time.
And they learned that the clock was their savior, and it was so regular because the clock doesn't lie. I mean, that's the great thing. I mean, it may break down by a new battery, but time doesn't lie in that way. It was my best friend, absolutely my best friend. Okay, anybody here listen on Sunday night to Kimberley Wong?
No.
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Oh my God. You know, touchy-feely, make sure they're in the right mood, make sure it's a nice calm room, and not too bright and not too noisy, and give them your full attention. And, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, Kimberly, I didn't have time for that. You know? And so you should hear all points of view and find out where your parents are in this and help them one-on-one, case by case. Because bless their hearts, they don't know. They don't know. So you've got to really find out. I'm very kinesthetic, as you know. Kate knows anyway. And so I like to actually go to their houses. I find some excuse. I say, leave your violin here and I'm going to put new strings on it. Right, and I'll deliver it back. And sometimes I deliver it back in the evening, so I see what's going on, but sometimes in the morning, whatever it is. I like to know what it is, and I'm not going to pry into all your private life. I know you work, but, you know, and maybe I know you're a businesswoman, but it's not for me to kind of, you know, I've got to be respectful of your space. You know, you've given me that much, that's enough. So I can just say, I know you're busy, but I can say, of course, with the pandemic's changed a bit, but I can say, what are your hours? Do you work every day or something? You know, do you see what I mean? I can feel in very respectfully. Remember, all your parents are very anxious in front of you. Even if the parent is older than you are, that's a difficult one for young people like you. Sometimes you're going to have parents that are older than you and you kind of think, you cower behind, but you are the one with the knowledge, so you've got to be strong. So you've got to find out how you can help them. Because here's another thing, this is a quote, you can put this as a Dr. Suzuki quote. Ability is developed at home. Okay, lots and lots of people read that and they kind of half understand it. They think to themselves, oh yeah, if you do it, if you play around and practice and play lots of things, you know, that I can see the child's ability grow. I get that. But what it means by implication is ability does not grow in the studio. That's not where ability grows. And most parents think ability grows at home, but even more in the studio. When my child's with Kate, that's when my child's ability grows. It's not true. Kate just pulls out what you as a parent have already allowed her to do. And she takes it on to the next level and says, over to you, my dears, now. You've got to do the next week. Yeah? Do you see what I mean? So they have to profoundly realize that they've been given a gift. This gift's absolutely irreplaceable and wonderfully precious. And it comes from, you know, the most respected person. Very often Suzuki teaches the most respected person that they have in their lives even.
I think that's so true.
I think you've got to really realise that, you know. I don't mean put on a pedestal necessarily, that perhaps won't help, but respect, absolutely, because they don't really know the class teacher. Miss, you know, oh, I hope you get Miss for your year 2, or another Miss for your year 3, or I didn't like that one very much. But, you know, there's such a distance between you, even if you see the teacher, you know, once a week or something, there's such a gap between the two of you. So the child doesn't really get as close as you might think as they do to that. You know, for example, would you be able to tell me the names and the colour and the look and the smell of your kindergarten teacher and your year 1 teacher and your year 2 teacher? Probably not. You might, you know, if you look back to your elementary school, you might remember a sports teacher, you might remember one teacher. I mean, I can remember 2, but my memory is quite sharp, but you know what? They just came and went. And I said to myself, my memory is so precious, I'm going to keep my memory for things that are really important. Yeah? So, next question is, do you remember your first violin teacher? bet you do. If it's not the first, the second anyway. Do you,
Yeah, all of them.
Kit?
Second one.
Yeah.
You were my first.
I could have done better on that one. Do you remember? Yeah. Ed?
I think so.
Think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there was many things done that always fascinate me. I'm always reading about these, cases that they have to show things. And there was a case recently by somebody called Svoboda, who went to Royal Northern College, which is in Manchester, I'm sure you all know, and interviewed, it wasn't just violin, but all the students who were there in their first year, and said, how did you get musical? And is it your mum, is it your dad, is it this and that? It was nothing to do with Suzuki, absolutely nothing. And one of the findings he had was that they all had a strong memory of their early violin teacher. It may not have been the first, may have been the second, but as somebody who taught me when I was really young, I do remember. So the fire was lit at a young age. They found that without any doubt that was the case. And he, Svoboda, found out that they often remembered the name of this teacher, right? So then he took his research a little further, and he said, I just want to talk to you about this teacher. So I'm going to call it the first violin teacher, because that's what he did. But in your case, it might be the second violin teacher. Tell me about the first violin teacher. Was he, she, a good violinist? Oh, I've no idea. I don't know. I don't think so. Was she a violinist at all? Well, actually, she played the piano for me when I played, So maybe, I can't really remember. Okay, was she a brilliant teacher? Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. I can't remember. So what do you remember her about? Oh, she let me eat a chocolate biscuit at the end of each lesson. She said she wouldn't tell Mummy if I did this, and I believed her. She let me stroke the cat, and bottom line, she thought that I played really well. Listen to that. That's the child who's now a professional, says, my first violin teacher believed, thought, whatever, that I played really well. Not I really liked her and she was really good, but she thought I played well. I mean, it was an answer to the question, did she think you were musical? Yes, I think she did. Did she think you played well? Yes, she did. Yeah, I think she did. And that's when the addiction starts. Oh my goodness, every week I'm going to meet this person who thinks I play well. I thought Kate played so well. I didn't have her at the beginning, but you came to me. Oh my God. I thought, I mean, just a no-brainer. I just thought, whoa, when you walked in the room. I mean, actually, I'd met you a couple of times before, or more than a couple, loads of times before, that you didn't really notice, when we were in that Ladbroke Square school, and your mum used to come, because I knew your mum before she was married. So, I did know Kate, sort of, as it were, as a baby, but, I have no trouble in that now. I see it so quickly, and you can take encouragement, I hope, from me by saying the more you teach in this way, the easier it will become. It'll become bigger, it'll become a bigger part of your life, it'll become more important, much more important in your life than you will ever think. I spoke to my teens the other day, earlier this year, a group of teens, and I was saying, one of them was my granddaughter, by the way, and I was saying, oh God, I'm so lucky to have my granddaughter Lorna here, it's lovely. I wasn't even sure that, my kids would all do Suzuki with their children, and I feel so lucky. And I said, tell me, when you grow up, are you going to, there's about 5 of them there, do you think that you'll have children? And they all said, yeah, probably, I don't know, you know, maybe, yes, kind of vague, you know, yeah, I think so. And then I asked them, I said, so do you think that your children will have Suzuki fun, Suzuki lessons, one instrument or another? And they all said yes. And I said to Lorna, because she went, of course, something like that. And I said, okay, Lorna, but supposing you meet somebody and you want to have children, but he says, you know what, I really don't think I want them to learn the Suzuki method. Then what would you do? She said, I just have to find another husband. 15 years old, the wisdom of a 15-year-old. She knows divorce is possible. She knows you have to make good choices. She said that, you know, from the top of her head, in front of her friends, without seriously going into it. So where do you think that comes from? Boom! Right from in there. Do you see what I mean? If we'd been having a little titchy chat and I've got something to ask you, and you know, and then she'd get her resistance going and all this, oh, I don't know, what, do you want the right answer? Wouldn't have worked. But that just came straight out. So that's proof of the pudding, isn't it? Do you see what I mean? And the more you can find stories like that in your lives, stories that you can find, and we have more and more Suzuki kids coming up, like Kate. I've just written a letter last night to Jenny Glester, who's contemporary, not contemporary, was more or less anyway, saying would she be kind enough to join us on the graduation team. And I listed the various reasons. I said, you know, your intelligence, your profound musicianship, and your wicked sense of humour, and you'd be just so great. And then I wrote a little PS. And your violin teacher would be so thrilled to have an ex-student. And, you know, I see my students just coming up, and not all Suzuki teachers, but they're certainly pretty well 100% all Suzuki mums. I mean, you've got loads of them here, haven't you? You've had several of my students who've come to the Hub. That's profoundly important. Why? Why do my students want to be A, Suzuki teachers, B, violinists, C, Suzuki parents? Why do they? Tell me.
It's a good method, very good method.
Something's got through. And you don't do it just because you liked me when you were little. You don't do it. You don't give your life up just because I was such a nice person. You don't, Kate. You might say, it would never happen without you. That's just not. Suzuki is the thing that you should go to. That's what you can't give up. It's the Suzuki philosophy, and that's what brings me around to the original point that I made, that Suzuki had a profound intention that's deeper than anybody in this room, including me, has any idea of. I mean, he's the most important person that probably lived in the last 500 years. You know, it's just profound beyond belief, because he said we've got to have peace in the world. Confrontation. So how do you solve that problem? You use all the tools you can. You go to the parents. You work it out, parent to child. And now my children, you see, have been really interesting for me to see how they do their GCSE homeschooling. I call it home, that's not quite the right word, sort of almost tutor. How do they help their children? How do they help their children tie a shoelace? They use Suzuki method. Do you see? How do they help their child really think of other people and keep time? And they use Suzuki method, things we've learned in the studio. That's where you learn. Yeah? That's where you learn chamber music is being, boom, responsible for your whole part in the team. So it's no chain, no weak link. All the energy's right out there. You learn all that. group lesson. Where you don't learn that from school, not really. No. So aren't we lucky? I mean, that we even found, Suzuki found me, you know, in the ancient traditions, you know what they say, that you don't find your guru, the guru finds you. That's part of, you know, 13th century ancient wisdom from the sages. And there I was with 4 children in the middle of nowhere, an hour outside New York, you know, in a green leafy suburb. And what happens? He sends one of his Japanese teachers from Matsumoto, comes and lives 2 miles from my house and starts a Suzuki school about 1 kilometre from my house. I mean, he found me. And then goes to the Montessori school where my children were all, and says, would you all like to learn violin? You know. So it's profound.
Brilliant, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Really.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Next one.
Lunch.
The other tool.
Lunch is the
I
next
see.
one.
Food is also a tool.